The day started like any other. The gray sky above Seattle had that familiar, dreary look, and I sat in my office, preparing for a busy day ahead. My daughter Madison was at school, and my husband Thomas was halfway across the world on a work assignment in Hong Kong. I glanced at the family photo on my desk, the three of us happy and smiling. Life felt stable, routine. I felt like I had everything under control. My career was thriving. I was balancing work and motherhood, and my family was my safe haven. But as I glanced at my phone, a small, nagging feeling tugged at me, something I couldn't quite place, like a tiny crack in my otherwise perfect day. The nagging feeling wouldn't leave me. I kept looking at my phone, checking for any messages from Madison, but there was nothing. It wasn't like her to stay quiet for this long, especially in the morning when she usually texts me about school. I tried to shake it off, reminding myself that she was probably busy. But still, something felt wrong. I had learned over the years that a mother's intuition was never far from the truth. I thought about calling her, but then I stopped myself. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Yet, that nagging feeling grew, a dull ache in my stomach that refused to fade. Just as I tried to focus back on work, my phone rang. It was my mother. I braced myself. Her calls were always about money these days. Ever since my father passed away, things had gotten worse for her. She had been living beyond her means for years, and I had stepped in to help. The burden was heavy, but she was my mother. "Lindsay, I need your help again," she said without hesitation. "It's for rent, and also Joseph's school trip fees." My heart sank. I had just sent her money last week, and here she was, asking again. I felt my patience wearing thin. My mother's financial demands were endless, but I didn't know how to say no. She had always relied on me. Before I could respond, I got another message from Madison. This one was different. It read, "Mom, I got full marks on my math test. I also memorized the song for the concert. You have to come, okay?" The excitement in her words was clear, but something about it felt too eager. Madison wasn't usually so dramatic in her messages. I paused for a moment, reading it again, trying to read between the lines. Was she trying to get my attention, or was she hiding something? I couldn't shake the feeling that she was reaching out for something more, something beyond just good grades and a concert. I quickly texted back, reassuring her that I would definitely be there. But the unease didn't go away. Later that day, my mother called again, asking if Madison could stay with her for a few days. I wasn't thrilled with the idea, but I also knew that I had been incredibly busy with work. I hadn't seen my mother or sister in weeks, and my daughter loved spending time at their house. It will only be for a few days, I told myself. Madison could use the break, and I could get some much-needed space to focus. Besides, I trusted my mother. She was family. But even as I agreed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My gut was telling me to reconsider, but I pushed it aside. There was nothing to worry about, right? The next morning, I kissed Madison goodbye as she left for my mother's house. It was supposed to be a simple visit. I went back to my routine, diving into client meetings and legal work. But something felt wrong. There was an emptiness to the house, a silence that felt heavier than usual. It was just me, the quiet hum of my office, and the distant memories of my family. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that everything was fine. But deep down, I felt a creeping sense of unease. Why hadn't Madison texted me yet? Where was she? I couldn't focus on my work, the worry building with every passing hour. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Madison, and my heart skipped a beat when I read it. "Mom, something's wrong. Grandma and Joseph left without me. I'm scared. Please help." My blood ran cold. I tried to stay calm as I read her words over and over again, trying to make sense of them. Left without her? What did that mean? I immediately called her back, my hands trembling as I heard her voice on the other end. She sounded confused, scared, and alone. They just left me, Mom. I don't know what to do. I could feel my world crumbling. I demanded to know where she was, but the fear in her voice was overwhelming. My daughter, abandoned in a house that was supposed to be her sanctuary. I had to get to her. I couldn't breathe. My daughter, my 12-year-old, was alone in my mother's house, left behind with no explanation. How could they do this to her? To me? I felt the walls close in around me as I tried to calm Madison down over the phone. Every word I spoke felt like it was suffocating me. She was in the yard, she said, playing alone when everyone just disappeared. Joseph, her cousin, had been avoiding her all day, and now she was abandoned. I asked if she was safe, if anyone was there, but she said no one was home. My mother, my sister, they were gone, and my daughter was left behind. I knew then that something was terribly wrong. Panic set in. I couldn't just sit back and hope that things would be okay. I immediately called the police. My daughter is at my mother's house and she's been left alone. I need help, I said, barely keeping my voice steady. The officer on the other end of the line reassured me they would send someone right away. But in that moment, I felt so helpless. I wasn't there to protect her. She was alone, scared, and I had no idea where my family was. It felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I booked the earliest flight back to Seattle, my mind racing with terrifying thoughts of what could have happened. Why would they do this to her? As I boarded the plane, I couldn't stop thinking about Madison. I had to get to her. The flight felt like it was taking forever, and with every passing minute, my anxiety grew. What was going on with my family? Why would they leave my daughter behind like that? What if this wasn't an accident? I had to find out the truth. My hands were shaking as I made more calls, checking in with the police. They were still at my mother's house, they said, but there was no word on where my mother and sister had gone. The not knowing was killing me. Every moment that passed felt like I was losing precious time with my daughter. When I finally arrived at the house, I was met by a police officer and Madison, who was safe but still in shock. The officer explained that they had reviewed the security footage from my mother's home. What I saw next made my heart stop. The footage clearly showed my mother and sister leaving the house, laughing and getting into the car, without even a glance toward Madison. They had left her on purpose. I felt a rush of cold anger and betrayal surge through me. My own family had abandoned my daughter, and I had no idea why. The truth was horrifying. It was a premeditated act. And in that moment, I knew that my life and Madison's would never be the same again. Standing there, holding my daughter tightly, I felt a wave of disbelief. My mother had done this. She had left my child, her granddaughter, to fend for herself. I had always believed that family meant loyalty, that we would always have each other's backs. But this wasn't loyalty. This was cruelty. My mother had used my daughter as a pawn, and I had been blind to it. I felt the walls I had built around my family crumbling. The foundation of trust I thought we had was shattered, and there was no way to rebuild it. I was no longer just protecting my daughter from the outside world. I was protecting her from the very people who were supposed to love her most. The police officer showed me the footage, and I watched, frozen, as my mother and sister walked out of the house, completely ignoring Madison. There was no apology, no attempt to explain, just cold indifference. The truth was undeniable. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. They had left my daughter behind, and I was left with the consequences of their actions. I had spent years supporting them, sacrificing for them, And this was how they repaid me? I couldn't stop the wave of anger that hit me. The footage had sealed the fate of my family. There was no going back. Madison clung to me, her small body trembling in my arms. As I looked around the house, the emptiness seemed overwhelming. This had always been a place of warmth for her, a place where she felt safe. But now it felt like a cold, empty shell. How could my own mother do this to her? I didn't have answers, but I knew that I couldn't allow Madison to be hurt any further. The house that had once been a sanctuary for her had turned into a prison, and it was all because of the people I had trusted the most. When I confronted my mother and sister, it was worse than I had imagined. My mother refused to take any responsibility for what had happened. "You're overreacting," she told me, as though abandoning Madison was no big deal. Kristen, too, was defensive. She didn't seem sorry, only annoyed that I was making a scene. They didn't even care about the hurt they caused. The truth was clear. They had no remorse, no understanding of what they had done. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was betrayal, plain and simple. The bond we once had was broken, and there was no fixing it. I had no choice but to take legal action. I couldn't allow my daughter to be exposed to this kind of behavior any longer. I filed for a restraining order against my mother and sister, cutting off all financial support. I needed to protect Madison from the damage they had caused, and I wasn't willing to let them continue using her as leverage. The process was painful, but necessary. The law had to be my shield now. There was no more room for mercy, no more room for compromise. I had to do what was best for Madison, no matter the cost. In the days that followed, I tried to make sense of everything. How had we gotten here? My family, the people I had trusted most in the world, had turned on me. I replayed every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. But the answer was clear. This wasn't just about money. It was about power. My mother and sister had used me for years, and when I started to push back, they retaliated by targeting my daughter. They thought they could break me, but they underestimated my love for Madison. I would never let them win. Time passed, and slowly Madison started to heal. Her therapy sessions were helping her process everything that had happened. The scars would take time to fade, but she was stronger than I had given her credit for. As for me, I had to learn to live without the people I had once relied on. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would never let anyone hurt Madison again. We would rebuild, and we would do it on our own terms. The family I had once known was gone, but in its place I had something far more precious. A daughter who had shown me the true meaning of strength.